Thank you so much. That was very beautiful. That's one of your originals, right? That's great. What talent. What talent we have here. Okay. I think it's our beloved Reverend Alex. We're so happy to have you with us 3 Sundays in a row. I think we're being blessed. Yay.
Thank you. I'm Reverend Alex. Is it on now? Oh, yes. Thank you. The booming voice of Alex. So, freedom from discord. What is it? It is, we oftentimes think that that involves just being in the Zen space and nothing bothers us and everybody gets along and everything is just all beautiful and rosy. But it really isn't necessarily that. It's being able to move into a situation that maybe has discord in it, but approaching it from being centered, being loving, being open to understanding the other side, and to being open to standing in our own truths. Freedom from discord is not living in a la-la utopian land where everything goes smoothly. And we're going to talk a little bit about how new thought has evolved a little bit into that idea, the 3 little monkeys of, see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. But what is evil? Evil is our perception of something that we are at discord with. So what do we need to do? We need to see clearly, without judgment, but in truth. We need to stand boldly, but kindly. And we need to go from a filtered faith of, oh, maybe it's me, everything is good, to clarity of a situation. That does not mean that we show aggression or that we play tug of war with ideas with another person. It just means that we speak our truth. And the next one, please. This is a great little story that I wrote, and I hope that you're going to like it. So we have this little character here. And this is Leonard Lightbody. And Leonard Lightbody is a seasoned New Thought practitioner who takes affirmations a little bit too literally. Every morning he proclaims, I am whole, perfect, and divinely guided. Parking spaces are mine, even at Costco. So one day, Leonard Lightbody felt called, either by spirit or maybe just by impulse, to climb Thunder Peak by himself. Now, Thunder Peak is a very rocky, it's a spiritual vortex, but it's got mixed energies in there. And most locals avoid it because it's mostly inhabited by very territorial mountain goats. But Leonard decided that he would go, that he was guided, guarded, and protected. And he brought along a flask of green juice, his tattered copy of the Daily Word, and a crystal that was shaped surprisingly kind of like a potato, but we don't know. So at the summit, he shouted his favorite affirmation: I vibrate at the frequency of ascension. And hearing the bleating of angry goats, he practiced his denials. Just as a very territorial goat named Shiva rammed them off the ledge. Now, miraculously, Leonard landed on a branch that was shaped like the word yes, and it cushioned his fall. But sadly, as the yes branch affirmatively gave way, he fell into a jagged ravine, and he lost a foot. So while recovering, he told everyone that he was so lucky to only lose 1 foot. Now, he said he gained deeper insights into the divine balance at the mere expense of a slight, imperceptible limp. And that now he had a permanent reminder to pause in the line before climbing anything that had hooved animals. But then he wrote a best-selling book that was called The Third Leg of Wisdom, Standing on Spirit When 1 Foot is Gone. So, what is the moral of the story? Some might say, even when life knocks you sideways, if your affirmations are strong and your crystal isn't really a potato, you might just suddenly limp back into enlightenment, right? But that's really not what we teach in New Thought. Had he been following the principles in this book, Freedom from Discord, instead of chanting, I vibrate at the frequency of ascension, while ignoring the storm and the goats' increasing aggression, he might have said, what am I trying to be told now? And he would have seen the angry goat as a divine messenger telling him to get the heck out of there. And he would have welcomed the goat as sacred discord, recognizing that he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. He would have embodied the sacred disruption without blaming the goat, recognizing that he is in nature and nature needs to be honored, but he would have done something else. And maybe he, instead of going out there by himself, he might have said, what can we do to help the collective? He might have gone with other people. They might have carved a trail that respected the space of the goats, yet created a spiritual nature walk for himself and others where we can share this beautiful place. And so we're going to be talking about how we recognize discord and how we align ourselves with it. Bless you. Not through denials, but by being in our truth and recognizing that we live in a world where things happen. And it is our responsibility to stay centered, to stay loving, but at the same time, no denying the truth of what is there, so that we can then be the difference that we want to see. We cannot have freedom and be the difference that we want to see in the world if we're in denial about the things that are happening. And the next one, please. Seeing through rose-colored lenses, filtered faith risks. So we distort the truth. It's a way we can evade discomfort. And we polish pain. I hear people in our teaching so often say, well, it always works out. And thankfully, most of the time it does. But we are active participants in our lives. What are we going to do to ensure that it works out? To stand up, to speak truth to power, again, with kindness, with a big heart, with big ears. And I invite you to ask yourselves, and it's not a very comfortable question. They say that we teach what we need to learn, so I've asked myself this a lot this week. Where have I chosen comfort over clarity? Where have I done that? The next one, please. There is a book by Robert Augustus Masters on spiritual bypass. Spiritual bypass is when spirituality disconnects us from reality. We have to learn to recognize and transform the obstacles in our path that keep us from living life fully. I know so often in spiritual bypass comes with avoidance. I have been guilty of that. We want everything to be good, so we just won't challenge things. Or we might be quiet. Or we might tell ourselves that that was meant to be. We have choice. We are here to be spirit in human expression. We have the power of choice. When we just say everything is going to work out okay, it does, but will it be the way that we would want to see it? And do we have as much right as anybody else, as long as we do not infringe on the space of another, the rights of another, the good of another person, to say, I have just as much room to stand in the light and to receive God's good as anybody else? The next one. This is what he says: when transcendence of our personal history takes precedence over intimacy with our personal history, spiritual bypassing is inevitable. What does this mean? He warns that when we use spiritual practices to rise above or avoid our emotional wounds, our traumas, the shadow aspects, whatever we perceive as negative, we disconnect from the very work that leads to true healing and wholeness. And he calls for a spirituality that is not an escape hatch, but a courageous descent into our full humanity. Now, we are spirit having a human experience, which means that we have some reins on that humanity. We have the wisdom to recognize that some of our human impulses might be selfish or egotistic or me first or comes from lack and limitation. We recognize that and we pull back on that. I'm not advocating for that. But we are here to braid spirit into this human life and reflect the light of the divine through what we do as human beings. The next one. So in this book, it says freedom is the willingness to step into discord while remaining centered in principle. This book speaks a lot about the political inequalities, the disenfranchised. Reverend David Alexander is a minister in Atlanta, Georgia, and he has a podcast that I listen to. He is a white heterosexual male in an integrated family whose life has been exposed to anything that you can imagine that a New Thought minister living an integrated family could have thrown at him in Atlanta. And so he is coming from a place of love, but yet strength and truth. Next, please. Discord does not mean division. I mentioned earlier, it is not about playing tug of war with another person, who's right and who's wrong. We can all be right because we see things differently. You know, heaven forbid, when there's an accident at an intersection, the insurance company and the police will talk to the people on all of the four corners. And they'll get all four different stories, maybe even more than that. And then they're going to put them together. We have a tendency to say, yeah, but this is my viewpoint. This is what's right. And so we have to recognize that we only see a partial truth of the reality. It doesn't mean it's not true. It doesn't mean it's not the whole of your experience. It just means that there's room for other opinions and for other viewpoints and for other explanations so that we can put it all together and create a more comprehensive whole of what happened. We must tell the truth with compassion. We must, in discomfort, remain in integrity. What does that mean? That means not watering down the truth that we're trying to share. And it's a very difficult thing. It's a very difficult thing to do because we've been taught not to hurt other people's feelings, and we think that if we disagree with someone, we're going to hurt their feelings. First of all, maybe we hurt their feelings because they have a need to be right. Well, we can present it as, in my view, in my opinion, the way that this would work for me. But most importantly, we must stand in that discomfort and go and speak to people that feel differently than us, that have different beliefs than us, and say, tell me more about that. It is our job to seek to understand and to reach out, because I promise you that most of them will not come up to us and ask us why we disagree, okay? We have a consciousness of inclusiveness. There are other different ways of believing in this world that would just mow down the consciousness of inclusiveness. And when we are being quiet and Zen-like and affirming that everything is good, then we are not doing our part as being an active light in this world. Now, unity is forged in authenticity. I'm speaking about the unity faith and the practice of unity. Let's talk a little bit more about that, please. James 2:20, faith without works is dead. I said that if we affirm that everything is good or we practice our denials, should we do that? Absolutely. But then we need to go and do something about it. We can't just simply do that. And I love this quote from Myrtle Fillmore. The healing journey isn't necessarily about following my bliss. Rather, it is about doing what the world needs most. Okay? So we seem to think that it's all about bliss, but it isn't about that. And then the inner bliss that comes from actually conquering the hardest obstacle of all, that's our inner fear of not being accepted by someone. But then we go beyond that, and we have ourselves be heard without taking anything away from the other person. The next one. I want to talk a little bit about new thought and the building blocks of new thought. We believe God is everywhere, in everything, and expresses through all life. This divinity, spirit, is not distant. It's not something out there, but it's immanent, meaning it is present. It is in each and every single one of us. It's in all things. It's in this podium, right? It's in all creation. Every person is a spiritual being, inherently divine and capable of expressing God's nature. But inasmuch as God in spirit has allowed free choice to every single being, not only should we also allow free choice as long as it doesn't infringe upon the rights of another, we have to recognize that that is an individual's choice. And an individual sometimes in life gets trapped into doing things that maybe are not the highest and best. Maybe they can't find their way out of that spiral. In speaking truth to power, we need to say, hey, what's happening here? And allow that individual a path back to truth, or at least show up, not give them free rein to just, go over everyone and everything and decimate the field, of our earth, of our livelihood, of our principles, of our democracy. And healing comes through aligning thought with spiritual truth. This has been a difficult week for me in that I've had to ask myself several times, how does this align with my spiritual truth? Sometimes that isn't the most comfortable thing. I remember one of my first ministers used to say that the word rationalize, they're rational lies. There is our ego telling us the story as to why we're right. And so it is so important when we rationalize that says, yeah, but this, it doesn't matter. We don't need that. That's not what it means to stand in our truth. The next one, please. Mind is a creative force. Our beliefs and mental states shape our experience. And we often call this mental science. And it is absolutely true. Illness and suffering are seen as the result of erroneous beliefs. Looking at Myrtle Fillmore and her miraculous healing through the power of the mind. I am a child of God and I do not inherit disease. What a bold statement that is. And she made that what she stood on for the rest of her ministry. And she really, once she got through that process, she was never sick again a day in her life. We are divine, eternal beings. The earth suit is not eternal. It comes with an expiration date, an unknown expiration date. But our spirits are eternal. And so we can manifest our perfect lives through right thinking. Now, this is all true, and we all agree with this. But the next one, please. Where does this lead to if it's all in our head? It sounds like a magic genie, right? Because now, so we've taken this beautiful teaching and we have moved it into our heads, and we need to go down 18 inches into our heart center and recognize that it is not just about that. Next, please. What is social justice? It's based on love, compassion, justice for all, especially the marginalized, creating a world that works for all, encouraging civil disobedience. We need only think of Emerson and Thoreau, the transcendentalist movement that comes back of the New Thought movement in the 19th century, social reforms, building a beloved community, and we look at nature as a moral compass. This is all part of our building blocks. Well, let's look a little bit at our history of New Thought. And so what is our history in New Thought? Next, please. I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself with the slides. I love this one. This is Freedom from Discord. Speaking truth to power. Instead of the monster being scary, the little boy is explaining something to him very kindly. But I'm going to go back and talk a little bit about the history of New Thought. So first of all, we're based on the Neoplatonist theories that there is one ascended divine intelligence, and that it is the individual's work to find that within themselves and to live it and to express it. And that led to principles of social justice. And it was a birth of the activist impulse. And it left a legacy that then became what Jesus, the great master teacher, brought forward. Jesus was definitely a social activist. I mean, let's look at his activities in the temple protest where he turned the tables over. That was a reaction to the exploitation of people, monetizing faith. God will only forgive you if you provide a sacrifice. And by the way, if you didn't happen to bring one, we're going to sell you one right here. That's what that was, all right? The Sermon on the Mount that was a manifestation of compassion and of equity. And who did he associate himself with? Tax collectors, lepers, women who at the time were not even counted as human being in the demographics. They just were. They were possessions. Samaritans. In his ministry, everyone was welcome. And his life became the blueprint for a liberating theology of civil rights, Martin Luther King, movements and grassroots movement that are rooted in love and compassion and equality. Moving forward from the lessons of Jesus, we go to the transcendentalists. And again, Thoreau wrote civil disobedience, the refusal to pay taxes, funding slavery, and the war. Emerson called for spiritual independence, to trust yourself. You know, there were plenty of people in government and in churches telling people what they should do, what they should believe, how they should dress, what's right, what's wrong. He said, trust yourself. And even Emma Curtis Hopkins, the teacher of teachers, that was a teacher to the Fillmores and to Ernest Holmes and to the founders of Divine Divine Science. She ordained women ministers at a time where no one did such a thing. And so this is our history in New Thought. It is one that's based on taking the principles of spirit and putting them in practice in our everyday life. And so how we got to from these beautiful ideals to one of continuing to affirm that everything is good and to deny anything that we perceive that it is unjust, that we perceive that it harms other people, that it flies in the face of divine decency. We have to be very careful that we don't do that, because it is up to us. It is up to us. And I would say this in any group, but in as much as we're all here and we're all part of this spiritual family and this community, it is up to us. It is up to everyone, and not everyone is open to listening to that. So I am so grateful that you are, and I want to take these principles out into the world. I challenge you to do that. The next slide, please. The world will be a better place when men and women begin to think rightly, speak truthfully, and act from the Christ within. That's Charles Fillmore. And from Ernest Holmes, the ultimate goal of life is a complete emancipation from discord of every nature, and this good is sure to be attained by all. And he's not talking about the fact that one day everything will be a utopia. If we all can treat others with respect, but speak truth to power, not allow ourselves to be frightened, know that we are eternal spirits come here to be a transcendent light, and that no matter what happens to our earth suit, our spirit is eternal. And we've come here just to do this work at this time in history. Then yes, we can all achieve a complete emancipation from discord. And the next one, please. So, in talking about the healing from the lie of separation and the illusion of discord, how do we achieve that? We recognize that discord is in our minds. It's in our minds. And we have to silence the monster that little boy was speaking so bravely to. That monster maybe came out from under the bed and went, rah! And the little boy goes, no, let me explain. How do we achieve this? The next, please. We achieve this through love. Love, compassion, equanimity, kindness, and big, 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 big ears that absorb whatever others say, and we understand that they're speaking it from their own corner where they saw whatever happened happen. And we integrate that into the whole truth. And so I want to thank you very much for this time. Next week, we're going to continue to speak a little bit more about this book and have some quotes from it. The following week, we're going to have Reverend Leona, so I'm very grateful for that. Please take this to heart. It is easier said than done. I know that. But do it anyways. I say this to you as I say it to myself. If we don't, then who will? Namaste.